Right, today I'm going to do another all extract brew. This is a bit of a first for me because I'm using entirely dried light malt extract, so no liquid malt extract. All the previous extract brews I've done, I've used either all liquid malt extract or a combination of dried and liquid. So this time I'm going to be using all dried light malt extract. It's also a first for me because I'm going to be trying this Kveik yeast. So as you might know, this Kveik yeast is known for fermenting out extremely quickly if you have it at a higher temperature. So I think the optimum range, as it says on here, is between 35 and 40, but anything over 30 I think is good. And it should finish within 2 or 3 days. So really the main objective here for me is to create, first of all, a very tasty, brew using fresh hops, but I also want a really quick turnaround. So really I'm trying to experiment to see how quickly I can turn around a really good quality beer. So I'm not going to be doing anything fancy. I'm not going to be adding any speciality grains. I'm not going to bother with that steeping process. I'm just going to go straight in, heat some water up to boiling point, add my dried malt extract and my hops at various intervals during that boil. What I'm intending to do is to do a kind of small boil, probably about 5 litres. By the way, this batch is really aimed at a 12-litre batch. I'm just doing a kind of experimental side batch. So it's a 12-litre batch. I'll probably boil 5 litres and add my hops into that. The reason being that I'm not doing a full-size boil is that I want to cool this down as quickly as possible, but with the least amount of fuss. So I don't want to kind of do a full-size boil and then have to cool it down in the sink. I just want to boil about 5 litres, and then to that I'm going to add really cold tap water. So that's going to bring the temperature down, hopefully, to pitching temperature, which for this Kveik yeast is conveniently quite high. So I'm going to be pitching it probably around 40 degrees. So I want to bring that down to about 40 degrees just using cold water, so no cooling. I'm going to do a 30-minute boil, no cooling. So this should be a really quick brew, and hopefully using this Kveik yeast, I'll be drinking it the following weekend. So within 7 days, I'm going to be drinking this brew, which is absolutely crazy. The reason I haven't tried this before is because I wasn't quite sure my setup was really up to keeping the water at that temperature. But I've done a little test. I just put some hot water in a fermentation bucket, wrapped it all up in insulation, put a heat belt on, stuck it in the thermofridge, which is out in the shed, so it's actually really cold where it is. But and I went out there first thing in the morning after a frosty morning, and it was around 30 degrees. So I think I'm going to sort of be able to maintain somewhere between 30 and 35 degrees on this 12-litre batch. So all going well, I'm going to be drinking this within a few days, within about a week or so. So no grains, it's just pure light malt extract, which is fine. I'm not really too worried about adding any malt character into this particular brew. It's going to be a fairly high hopped tropical style pale ale. So I'm using Centennial and Azacca as the sort of flavour and aroma hops. I'm also going to be using a small amount, sort of 2.5 grams of Chinook, which I've got left over from another brew for the bittering. So a small amount of Chinook at the start of the 30, and then somewhere towards the end, haven't quite worked it out yet, probably actually about, 10 minutes to the end, I'm going to add some Centennial and Azacca, and then a further, maybe at 5 minutes, I'm not sure yet, another batch of this, and maybe a hop stand as well. So I'm going to bring it down to about 80, hopefully, and do a hop stand. So I don't know whether that's going to be too much hassle, or I should just go for it and then go for a big dry hop. So I'm going to work that bit out in between now and getting it on the boil. And so hopefully I'm going to be drinking a nice, tasty, tropical pale ale in a week's time. So we'll see how it goes. So without further ado, let's get brewing. Okay, so I've got my water on the stove, just coming to a boil, 5 litres of water. So while I wait for that, I'm just weighing out my hops, or I just have done actually. And this is the hop schedule that I've settled on. I'll post all this in the description of the video, so you can refer back to this if you want to replicate it. But essentially it's 2.5 grams of Chinook at the start. So I'm doing a 30-minute boil, so that goes in right at the start for the full 30 minutes. 9 grams of Centennial, 7 grams of Azacca at 15 minutes into the boil. And then 10 grams of Centennial and Azacca at flame out. So at flame out, I'm going to lower the temperature to about 80 degrees, hopefully just by adding some cold water. So I'll be adding that for about 10 minutes to steep. And then that's it really. So the last one is just my dry hop, which is 15 grams each of Azacca and Centennial. So, you know, it's a fairly generous dry hop for a 12-litre batch as this. So they're all weighed out in order, so there's no messing about when I come to add them in. I'm just going to add them into like a mesh bag into my pot as I go. So first one 30, next one 15 minutes. There's my flame out. And the 30-gram dry hop. So actually I'm going to stick that in the freezer to keep it fresh. So same with my bags here. So I've opened these up. All I'm going to do is put them in a little sealy bag and put them in the freezer as well to keep them fresh for another brew. And that's it really. So first edition will go in once the water's come to the boil. Okay, so my water's just about sort of reaching boiling point. Before it does, I'm going to add in 500 grams of light dried malt extract. I'm going to take it off of the heat source because you don't want to add your dried malt into this. It will fall to the bottom and scorch to the bottom of the pan. So you want to move this off of the heat source itself just while you add your dry malt. So I'm going to do that. Okay, so the 500 grams of dried malt extract has been added. It's back on the heat. So I'm going to bring this up to boiling point. I'm going to keep a careful eye on it at this point so you don't get a boil over. Just kind of have a spoon to hand. So you can give it a quick stir in or be ready to turn the heat off because you want to try and avoid a boil over if you possibly can. It's a horrible mess to clear up. Right, so my wort's come to a boil now. Just going to go with my first addition, which is the 2.5 grams of Chinook, which I put into one of these sort of nylon bags we can get from the supermarket. They sell as reusable fruit and veg bags, ideal for this sort of thing. So I'm just going to drop that in, set my timer for 15 minutes. At which point my second edition is going to go in. Alright, so 15 minutes is just coming up on the first part of the boil, so I'm going to put my second edition in now, so it's just going to go into the nylon bag. The little white speck in there is just a fraction of a Protafloc tablet, which is a Kettle Findings thing, so I'm going to put that in as well at the 15-minute mark. Right, we're just coming up to 5 minutes left of the boil. I'm going to try and add my the rest of the dried malt extract into here without creating too much of a mess, just so it's kind of sanitized before it goes in the fermenter, and then I'll do the hop stand. So I'll be reducing the temperature of this to 80 degrees, probably just in the sink for maybe 5 minutes. Should get it down to 80 degrees, and then we'll be good to add the final hop addition. Okay, so I've got this now to below 80 degrees. I'm going to have my third and final hop addition, and this is going to stand for about 10 minutes, just at that temperature, roughly. Right, it's all wrapped up. Just put some insulation around it, just to help keep the heat in. I've got a heat belt around it, so hopefully that's going to keep it a steady, well, plus sort of 30 degrees. Yeah, I was pretty lucky with the pitching temperature actually. So once I'd poured the wort after it had been in the whirlpool, straight into the fermenter and topped it up to 12 litres with cold water, it was just over 35 degrees, sort of 35, 36 degrees, so sort of almost perfect pitching temperature for the Kveik yeast, or Kveik yeast, however you pronounce it. So yeah, fairly lucky with that. So just wrapped it up, and it's come down into the shed, into the fermentation fridge. So lost a few degrees there, but we'll soon warm up again once the heat belt's on. So hopefully this is going to be finished in a couple of days. So yeah, I'll probably come back in a couple of days and dry hop it. So yeah, see you then. So I've just come back down to check the temperature, make sure it's holding at 30. This is 5 hours on, so as you can see, it's well underway already. So yeah, pretty amazing, this yeast. Right, here we go, back for the tasting. As you can see, it's a little bit hazy. I don't know what the reason for that is. When it's at room temperature, perfectly clear, put it in the fridge or out in the shed as this one's been, you get a bit of chill haze on it. So could be something to do with the way I didn't chill it down after the boil perhaps, or might be something to do with the yeast. I really don't know, but I don't really care. It doesn't matter anyway. I don't mind it like this, but that's kind of just why it's like that. It's just how it is. So this beer finished, so I put it on Wednesday, it finished on Friday, I dry hopped it on Friday and bottled it on the Sunday. So I did actually try a bottle of this on day 8. So day 8 from start to actually drinking, so brew to bottle, 8 days. Wasn't quite carved enough, and it tasted like it needed a bit more conditioning. So here we are now, nearly 3 weeks after bottling. So even though that Kveik yeast, it ferments out really quickly, so you can get the brew, you know, done and dusted really quickly. I still think that it needs a little time conditioning. If you're desperate to drink it, you can do as soon as it's carved. But you know, like any beer, it's going to benefit from conditioning. So hopefully this one's going to be fully carved. I'll talk about that more in a second. And I'll give it a pour. So there's a bit of a hiss. I can see some bubbles coming up, so some carbonation. Okay, so it smells kind of malty, and there's some hop in there as well. So just a note on the carving, just while I pour this out. So as I said, I did try one of these only after a couple of days in the bottle, and it hadn't carved properly, but where I'd left them was at room temperature. So bear in mind that this Kveik yeast requires a high temperature to ferment. So if you have it at room temperature, like I did to carve up, it's going to take longer. It will still ferment, but it will take longer. So just bear that in mind. If you want it, you know, carved up super quick, as well as after you brew, then just bear in mind you're going to have to put it somewhere warm, 30, 35 degrees. So anyway, on to the tasting. As you can see, it's not clear. I don't think it's ever going to be clear if it's chilled down. Please post your comments. Let me know what you think about that. But yeah, it's definitely suffering with a bit of chill haze. It's a nice colour, considering there's nothing else in here apart from light dry malt extract. It's very golden. So I don't know whether that colour has been developed from the yeast or the hops or the boiling process. Maybe some caramelisation with the boiling process has given it a nice golden colour. But actually, apart from it being a little bit hazy, it actually looks pretty good. Smell-wise, well, bear in mind this is a tropical pale ale, so we should be getting some tropical notes from the Azacca and the Centennial as well. There are some tropical notes there. There's a bit of a sort of malty smell to it, which is surprising considering there's no kind of grain to give it a bit of you know, grain flavour, if you like, or aroma. It's just pure dry malt extract. There is a bit of a malty sort of smell to it, but there is a definite citrusy, skunky type smell in the background, and there's notes of tropical fruits as well. But it's not it doesn't smell like fresh pineapple and fresh mango. There's definitely a sort of mango-y type smell there, but it's more like you know those little pineapple cube sweets you get, a real sort of sweet pineapple-y smell coming through it. It smells good. Not too hoppy, but it's got a nice hop aroma to it. Sweet fruit. And it tastes good. There's some definite sort of hop flavour to it as well. Again, that sort of sweet fruit, tropical fruit flavour. It's really not bad. Considering how simple the brew was, literally just dry malt extract, some hops and some yeast, it's really not bad at all. I think personally it's worth the extra effort with maybe adding some steeping grains in there, some carapils or whatever to help the head retention and give it a little bit more body. You can see it, I mean, it's not bad. There's some lacing on the glass. It's, you know, it's not completely thin and lacking head. It's pretty good. I mean, it's not highly carbonated anyway. It's quite low carbonation. So it's not fizzing up and providing a head, but what's there is kind of, you know, sticking around. It's not completely flat. But I think just adding those, something like carapils or some crystal in there does help with that. And it gives it a little bit more sort of, a bit more interest, a bit more sort of malt flavour coming from it. But we knew that from the start. The objective here was to turn around a quick beer, the least amount of fuss, which we've done here. So, you know, I think it's turned out quite well. Excuse me. And yeah, I'm pretty pleased with it. It's really, I mean, brew to bottle a week. Including a dry hop. I could have done it in a few days, maybe 4 days. It could have been bottled, but I dry hopped it. But it's really not too bad, and I think it's one of those beers that's going to get better and better. So it's nearly 3 weeks in the bottle. It's definitely got better over those 3 weeks. It's turning into a good beer. I'd recommend that you give it a try. I know it's easy for me to, it's not easy for me to try and verbalise and articulate, you know, what it tastes like and what it smells like. You know, don't take my word for it. If anyone fancies a bottle of this, I've got a couple of plastic bottles. I normally do a couple of plastic bottles for each brew just to kind of keep a, you know, be able to tell how well it's carbonating, keep an eye on the carbonation. So I always do a couple of bottles. So I've got a couple of plastic bottles of this. If anyone fancies trying one, put down in the comments your name and I'll get in touch with you and I'll send you out a bottle. So I think I've got a couple of bottles. So the first couple of people that comment or ask for the bottle, you know, I'll send one out to you. See what you think. Let me know what you think. It'll be great to, you know, get some feedback on this. Personally, I think it's pretty good for what it is, but I'd be interested to see, you know, what other people like, and you know, let me know. All right, well that's that for that. I think it's mission accomplished. I think it was pretty successful. Yeah, all right. Well, till next time. Cheers, guys.